Hola, hola mi gente, bienvenidos una vez más a Más Allá del Miedo. Estoy muy contento porque hoy tengo una invitada desde Canadá. Ella es Toni-Lee. Es una amiga de la casa, la conozco hace muchos años, nos entrenamos juntos para procesos de coaching. Ella es coaching en liderazgo, coaching estratégico, ha hecho grandes cosas, ha sido una inspiración para mí por muchos años. Hoy tengo la oportunidad de que esté aquí con nosotros, que comparta su historia de vida. Vamos a hablar acerca de drogadicción, de alcoholismo, de traumas de infancia y cómo ella logró superar todo esto. Y esto le permitió realmente encontrar una paz y un balance en su vida. Es una charla extremadamente inspiradora y sé que les va a gustar. Pongan mucha atención porque los mensajes aquí van a ser muy poderosos hasta el último minuto. Así que espero que lo disfruten mucho. Vamos. So, let me welcome you all. Right now I'm here with Toni-Lee from Canada, a great friend of mine. We have met each other for the last 10 years. I think so.
Yeah,
And
it's been a while.
now I have the opportunity to interview her, be here with her, and share with you her wisdom. So, Tony, thank you very much for taking the time and being here today.
No, I'm genuinely honored that you asked to have a conversation with me, David.
I know you a while, and I know you have a lot of things to share. I have learned so many things from you, and then I
Mm,
realized, okay, let's use this opportunity to contact once again to have a chat. And as I told you in our conversation before the interview, I'm focused on talking about fears. I'm focused on fears
mhm,
and trying to share different experience and how so many people dwell with these issues, you know. And one of the first things that I always ask is, in order to understand or to have a basic understanding where we're coming from, what does the word fear mean to you?
mm. Yeah, that's such an interesting question. There's depending on which perspective I'm sitting in, fear is going to mean a different thing to me. So let's just start with the basics. So physiologically,
Mhm.
from a scientifical point of view, I see fear as as an electrical impulse that starts in my brain that activates my amygdala. Maybe I'm not
Amygdala.
saying the right thing.
Amygdala.
The amygdala? Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's responsible for releasing all kinds of hormones in my body into the bloodstream, things like cortisol and adrenaline and feeling these feelings in the bloodstream, right? And these hormones actually lead to a physical response, right? Like the increased heart rate, rapid breathing, maybe we're like on alert, hairs on the back of our neck are going up,
Mhm.
right? And this is all part of the body's fight or flight response. So from a basic physiological level, that's what fear is. And it's important, I believe, to understand what fear is from that physical perspective. Now, for what purpose do we have fear? Like if we think about evolution, David, right? For what purpose in the grand design of our bodies did the great creator give us fear, right? For what
Mhm.
purpose do we even have fear? So from that perspective, fear to me is it's an evolutionary mechanism that serves
Okay.
to keep us safe,
Very
right?
practical then.
Yes, it serves to keep us safe, like by alerting us to potential dangers, like, oh, there might be a tiger behind that tree, right?
True.
It's the ability to enhance our survival. Hundreds and thousands of years ago, when human beings existed within a tribe, what would happen if we got kicked out of the tribe? If
Mhm.
we didn't belong, if we were um, outcast from the tribe, we would be in the wild by ourselves, and our chances of survival were likely slim to none. Chances of getting eaten by a tiger were pretty great.
Yeah.
So, the fear alerted us to, oh, I'm in a social situation and I might be outcast. Ooh, right? Danger, danger, survival, survival. So the cool thing is that when we become aware of this, we realize, hundreds and thousands of years later, here we are in 2025, and we're still operating from these basic fundamental evolutionary fears
Hmm.
that were legitimately there to keep us alive, right? Like if I'm walking down a back alley late at night and I got Buddy behind me looking all sketchy following me, that fear's legit,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
Right. So um yeah, I feel like we get into troubles with our fears when we become over identified with them, and when we become entrenched, or we become stuck in the hormones, in the fight or flight, and the rapid breathing and the feelings of it. Um, but that's what we're here to discuss. So what does the word fear mean to me? I believe it's an integral part of the human experience, and I feel like ignoring our fear only suppresses it into the subconscious. It
All
pushes it
right.
down, and then we find ourselves frozen or paralyzed or acting in ways to avoid facing our fears, because we're not owning it, right? Maybe we're not quitting that job, we're not facing that bully because
True.
no, no, nothing to be afraid of here. So yeah,
Well,
I don't know.
that's interesting because sometimes if we are afraid, froze, we freeze actually,
Mhm,
and that is not the ideal respond to fear. It's one of them, but it's
mhm.
normally should be like fly or fight. No, you have to do something to overcome that fear. But sometimes we just freeze and we don't work the best way possible for us, because if someone wants to attack you and you freeze, then you are just like in a silver platter serve to the people or someone, some kind of danger. So this is quite interesting. So in the evolutionary part, we have this tool, but somehow we don't manage to use it accordingly sometimes.
Well, and well, this all comes down to our consciousness.
Hmm.
All right. And even I think of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. All right. So there are how many human beings on the planet? And I'm fully aware that there are beings out there that are looking at basic survival, such
Hmm.
as clean air, fresh water, food, shelter. Do they have a place to sleep? Do they have clothing for their children? These are going to be basic fundamental survival fears,
Hmm.
right? Then, as you move up the ladder of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there's safety needs, security and protection from emotional harm. Is our health in order? Do we have financial security? So then there's going to be fears from that level. As you go up Maslow's hierarchy of needs, then there's the fears of love and belonging, right? Having those emotional relationships and those emotional needs met. Do I have friendships? Do I have intimacy? Do I have family connections? Do I feel like I'm, interacting with my tribe? Do I feel like I belong? Then there's going to be fears from that level. And then above that, once we have all those needs met and all those fears are are addressed, then we're looking at esteem needs,
Hmm.
right? This is where, am I achieving? Am I getting recognition? Do I have confidence? Do I have the respect of others? Am I leaving a legacy? Am I contributing? Do
Well,
I
but
matter?
in that case, we need to differentiate between
Mhm.
actual fear of survival and the fears that we, let's say, invent ourselves because
Mhm.
I don't matter, or because I think I'm gonna be alone. Yeah, of course, if you see the hierarchies, we move upward depending on
Yeah.
the quality of our life, depending on the kind of things we have achieved. But I believe, based on this survival idea, that there is a point when those fears are just created by our desires or expectations of how can I meet those needs. What do you think?
So, yes. So this is where it gets cool. So depending on where we're at, and by the way, I believe somebody can be conscious and awake, like their third eye awake, all right, and be finding themselves in a physiological needs state. Okay, so I don't
True.
believe that that where you land on Maslow's hierarchy of human needs is necessarily a reflection of someone's consciousness.
Hmm.
Because somebody who is like enlightened and the Buddha could all of a sudden find themselves amongst a mudslide, right? Um, this is where things get kind of cool, is when we can recognize and we become conscious, right? We awaken to the purpose of our fears. And so I've got a visual. So do you see this, David?
Hmm.
It's my little, it's
I
my
have the
little
same
shield.
glasses. Funny
Do
thing,
you?
but in the black
No.
version.
Well, okay. I don't drink alcohol. That's part of my story. Is I found recovery. I'm a clean and sober girl, but I do like raw juice. Anyways, so if I have this container and I take this container to the ocean, how much water am I going to be able to get?
As much as
A
it
sugar glass
fits.
full. Yeah. And what's cool about this is it's a visual representation of our beliefs, our attitudes, and our behaviors. All right. So what are our beliefs about fears? What are our attitudes about what we fear? What are we actually doing with our fear? All right.
Mhm.
And the our beliefs, our attitudes, and our behaviors is going to determine the symbol that we have and the amount. And now if the ocean represented the experiences of life, if you
Mhm,
will,
mhm. Yeah.
then you could get a shot glass. Now, how do we, if we want more than just a thimbleful, how do we get a bigger container?
Hmm. And then we expand our
And
mind.
how?
Right.
So what happens is, this is the inside of this cup is our experiences of life. And if we want a bigger cup, we must go to the edge and go where we've not gone before.
Mhm.
But here's the thing, anytime we find ourselves on the edge of going where we've never been before, all of a sudden our belief system, which, by the way, physiologically and biochemically, we're designed to keep us safe, starts going alert, 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 danger, danger, danger. You've never been there. You've never been there. Mystery, mystery.
Mhm.
Retreat, retreat, abort, abort. Chemicals, chemicals, fear, cortisol, stress. Stop, stop. Don't go where you've never been before.
Sure.
But here's the thing, we exist beyond this.
Mhm.
And when we have the courage to expand, feel the fear into our perceived danger zone. All right. And I'm not talking about being foolhardy and reckless, and I'm just going to walk down a dark alley at night because there's nothing to be afraid of here.
Yeah.
Right. No, this is about being wise and discerning. So when we intentionally feel our chemical feelings and acknowledge, thank you, brain, for working to keep me safe. And I'm going to step forth and do what I've never done before. And we do it over and over and over. Wouldn't you know, our container for life expands. Now we can go to the ocean of life with a bigger container. So,
Nice preps, by the way. Props.
so
I mean,
yeah, yeah. So
that's really
here's
good.
the thing is that all of the magic that I'm looking to experience in life is on the other side of fear. And from this perspective, David, fear is a gift. Thank you, fear, for showing me where my work is.
Mhm. Yeah.
Thank you, fear, for giving me a clue towards what I need to lean into to grow. Now, it's nice in theory.
Of course. I mean, the challenge is to understand that and go beyond those fears and realizing,
Yeah.
okay, that was actually true. And I think this everyone is challenged by this idea. Even the people that have been working on themselves for so long, um, we still have fears and we still have struggles, and we understand what is beyond those fears. But doing the work, moving towards that, is always a challenging part. But it's part of the experience that
Mhm.
we are actually here to live. And if we go that direction, in your case precisely, what has been your most significant fear,
Mhm.
and how does it show up in your life?
Yeah. And this is the thing. This is, it's one thing to intellectualize and to sit here and have an intellectual conversation about fear, but
Mhm.
it's another thing to actually apply these things,
Totally, totally.
you know. Um,
Mhm.
and and you did share the questions beforehand, and I looked at that one and I thought, oh my gosh, I could go on and on about this and on about that. But if I were to boil it down to one main fear, I feel like has been a a lifetime of overcoming consistently, it would be the fear of not not owning my power, or my fear of losing my power, or my fear of being able to move in this world. And now I define power, David, as the ability to act, right?
Okay.
Like I have the power to lift up this pen, I have the power to speak words, right? Power for to me is the ability to act. And one of my greatest fears has been the loss of that. And in a strange way, claiming it. And I can talk a little bit more about this.
Please, because I think it's a very interesting fear. I have never heard about this kind of fear. So, and I'm pretty
Mhm.
sure the people watching this will love to understand even better how come does I can have fear of losing my power. How come?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so very briefly, in a nutshell, these fears started back when I was a child. And um, there was a lot of physical abuse in my home. There was a lot of drug addiction and just a lot of toxic insanity.
Hmm.
And as a child, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, physiological and safety needs were definitely an issue. And um, I learned to like pull it in and play small in order to keep myself safe.
Hmm.
And, um, you know, from there, as I grew up, I myself got involved with drugs and alcohol. And um, that's the very definition of loss of power. So anybody who's experienced drug addiction, it's about giving your power over to something greater than you, right? And um, you know, I did end up going into a recovery center and getting clean, where that's where I started to learn about reclaiming my power. And even then, I still needed to give my power over to a power greater than myself, like give my will over to something outside of myself, because I never trusted my own internal guidance system to know what was best for me. So even then, in the 12-step program, David, I was still giving away my power. Now, it was a force for good, thank goodness. I mean, the 12-step recovery program is a beautiful design for life and creates freedom from active addiction, which is the very nature of powerlessness. From there, I entered into my first marriage I mean, we were young and we were both recovering addicts, and so you can
Okay.
imagine how that
Mm,
played out, and it
mm,
too became physical. Um, cool thing is, though, by that point, I had had enough personal development and recovery to know that this wasn't it, and so I managed to liberate myself from that marriage. But there was a lot of fears that I faced in that, and um, you know, there was this experience of loss of powerlessness. From there, I had a relationship where my boyfriend committed suicide, and he did it right outside my office. I was inside working and he pulled up outside my office and killed himself. And, um, I completely gave up my power after that. Because at that point in my life, I was calling in my power. I was this facilitator for personal development seminars, and I was a coach, and I was doing this and that, and I had all my esteem needs. And then when my boyfriend killed himself, I just again shrunk. I called it all in, and I just pulled all my personal agency back. I started drinking again. I started just giving up all my power. So this has been a lifetime theme, as you can see, and getting clean and sober again, finding recovery, because honestly, for me, life clean and sober is way better than not, right? But even from there, David, like I found myself in jobs where I had no power. I had no personal
mhm.
freedom, no
Yeah.
choice over how I was spending my days. And I put myself in careers and situations where my voice was suppressed, where my power was suppressed, um, because that had been my lifetime pattern. Now, I did this until I reached a point in my experience, David, where I developed an autoimmune condition known as
Mm.
myositis. Now, myositis, it's not a very well-known one, but myositis is when the immune system starts to attack the body's muscles. It's a muscle
Okay.
wasting disease. All right. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting that I spend a lifetime not claiming my power and giving my power away? And then I develop a disease where my own body attacks my muscles. And what are muscles?
Oh,
Muscles are our source of power. So
wow.
the light bulb went on for me. Thank God. Thank God I had
Mhm.
the consciousness because, all throughout these years, David, I mean, I've been doing these human potential seminars, and I understand the power of personal responsibility. I understand, accountability, emotional response accountability. I even understand spiritual accountability. All right. So when this happened, now I went from running marathons to being in a wheelchair, to not being able to dress myself, to not being able to even wash my own hair. Um, Feeling like, talk about the ultimate giving away of my power. So I realized, when that happened, I was like, okay, this is my wake up call. This is my hello, TL. How are you going to live the rest of your life? Because I understood that I was choosing this to some degree. And I could look back and I could see how this fear of owning my power had played out throughout my life, right? And in fact manifested and perpetuated the very thing I was afraid of, which was the loss of my power, you know?
This is huge. I mean, this is unbelievable. But mm, although we might have not heard about this kind of fear the way you describe it, I'm pretty sure that everyone in a certain moment of their lives have felt powerless, or
Mm,
that they are giving up their power. And for me, it's quite interesting the way you explain to us this process. Is extremely powerful. And I see you. You can move. You can.
oh,
Pretty sure you can comb your hair and dress yourself and do many different things because you have overcome this situation. Um, However, for me, this is quite interesting to understand. For me, it will be important to pinpoint the moment
mm,
when you realize that you were afraid of losing your power. Because when I'm listening to your story, you start telling me that there was a violent household, then you start doing drugs and alcoholism and all this kind of stuff. But in which moment do you think that the loss of your own power start to become an issue? You know what I mean?
mhm.
Is it
Yeah,
clear what I mean? Or
yeah, yeah. I don't think I can pinpoint it, David. I feel like it's coming to consciousness comes in layers and waves. Coming to consciousness comes in layers and waves. And I feel like, in terms of fear, it's being willing to look at the uncomfortable. And if I were to like pin it down, realizing that over these years, these decades, and the way I had chosen to spend my life ultimately manifested with this autoimmune condition. That was my wake up call. That was my moment of like, okay, what's really going on here? And I'm really into the metaphysical causes of things. And, I did look up, if what do muscles represent? Muscles represent power. And so I thought, okay, and this was an internal wisdom. There wasn't like a book I read or a coach telling me this. This came from within myself, an
Mhm.
internal knowing. I knew, like I knew, like I knew, David, that if I were to have any hope in any kind of quality of life and sticking around, I needed to begin to call in my power and start to act from a place of power, start to act on behalf of Toni-Lee. Stop living my life for other people and begin living Toni-Lee's life for Toni-Lee, because Toni-Lee's power is for Toni-Lee. It's not for Toni-Lee's boyfriend. It's not for Toni-Lee's kid. It's not for her husband. It's not for her boss. It's not for horrible memories. It's not for her trauma. Toni-Lee's power is for Toni-Lee to create the most extraordinary life that Toni-Lee can create. So that was the turning point, and my kid, I remember David, my child, he was quite a bit younger, and he was sitting on the steps after this had all sort of gone down, and he was bawling, and he was looking at a picture of him and I. And and I said, "Sweetheart, what's the matter?" And he said, "I just wish you were going to be around longer, Mom. I love you, and I'm sad because
Jesus.
I was dying, and I thought, I am not doing this anymore. Like, what am I doing here?" And that was the moment. I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I knew, David, that I needed to go from this source of personal power to this and beyond. And that's how the journey began.
Something comes up in my head when I'm listening to you. I mean, I ask many things. You decide what you respond. It's of course up to you. I'm just curious about your situation, and I wonder, were there, was there a reason why you gave up your power? Because it was something that came many times in your life, you were afraid of, but still it happened. So
Yeah,
maybe, are you aware why,
sure.
despite
Oh, yeah,
needing the power, you just gave it away?
sure. Yeah, I first and foremost didn't think I was wanted by my
Gotcha.
parents. In fact,
Mm.
I mean, I've worked on that. That was a core limiting belief for a long time, that I was an unwanted pregnancy and I wasn't wanted. Therefore, I was worthless. I didn't even realize that I had power, because I had personally, as a woman, growing up where I've grown up, I developed many beliefs and had received the message consistently over and over and over that my voice wasn't valued and that I had nothing worthy to say, you know? And
Mhm.
and that combined with, well, I'm not wanted anyways, at a less than conscious level, that's what drove these things. Now, owning my power is to be able to go a step back and go, is this story true? Is this story true? Is it true? Right? And that's power, because the point of power, the ability to act, is always in the present moment, right here, right now. What is the truth? Taking that out, what I am wanted. I'm a beautiful soul here having a human experience. I am wanted. I am loved. I'm supposed to be here. I'm supposed to enjoy. Toni-Lee is Toni-Lee's soul greatest wish come true here on humanity in this lifetime. So choosing that story, having the courage, facing the fear of going, what is the story and what is the truth? What story do I choose? And so from there, David, I started to begin to step outside the norm. And I've had many people go, wow, Toni-Lee, you're not really like other people, are you? Especially in my community. I live in central Alberta, where, Alberta beef is the norm. And, with the autoimmune disease, David, I stepped into, embracing a raw food lifestyle. Now, I'm not 100% raw or anything like that, but I eat a lot of salads and I drink a lot of fresh juice, and I'm often gnawing on a carrot, at the family barbecue, right? Which takes courage. Well, that's me facing fear of other people's judgments. Leaving my first marriage took courage.
Of course.
Anytime stepping out into the unknown, leaving. So part of my recovery, when I was first diagnosed, I was working for a drug and alcohol testing company. I was helping companies design drug and alcohol policies, and it was great money, really good money, but I knew, like I knew, if I stayed, I would never get well, because every single moment of that day was spent doing somebody else's bidding,
Mhm,
in
mhm.
exchange for money. So I knew, something needed to change. And so I made the decision, I made the choice to leave. And, I transitioned into another job, and it was just like, okay, in the moment of right here and right now, what choices can I make? How can I own my power? And the power, the choice I can make to go outside of the comfort zone, into my perceived danger zone, is how I started to move forward. And you know, l- little bit by little, I could sit here for 3 hours, David, telling you about every little journey I've taken. But I mean, I've ended up spending months in Mexico. I've gone to, like, I asked myself last summer, what would blow my mind if it actually came through? And what came to me was, wow, if I could spend a whole week at a Mexican yoga retreat, like actually doing yoga, like I was strong enough to do that, that would blow my freaking mind. And I did it.
Great.
And, you know, and
Awesome.
but I had to go by myself and, get on a plane, and I had no idea what I was getting into, if I was going to be capable. And let me tell you, there was so much magic that happened, you know, it, in throughout that journey and that experience. And um, yeah, like now, even just opening my heart fully to another man, which I've been married now for going on 9 years. And is it perfect? It's marriage, but we face our fears and we work through
Of
them and all of
course.
that, but yeah, I mean, it was all integral to understand the role of how my fear of, claiming my power was actually keeping me sick. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that responds many of the questions that I had for you because you have already told us about the kind of things that you lost because of this fear, and how you have managed to overcome it. But taking this all these experiences, amazing experience that you have lived in your throughout your life, um, how do you, when it happens, how do you normally deal with your fears?
Mhm.
Since you have this huge fear that you have managed and you work on that one, um, does it help to overcome other fears, or did you manage to find out the kind of a, let's say, a recipe to manage or to deal with the fears when they happen, when they appear? Maybe your neck start like the hair of your neck start like jumping around, or your stomach start like having butterflies. I don't know, this kind
Mhm.
of situations.
Yeah. Yeah, if I were to break it down, I mean, it's just based on my experience, and this is
Of
always
course,
expanding. This is always expanding. So,
definitely.
I feel like the first part for me is getting out of what I call crocodile brain, because once when the amygdala is releasing those hormones, and I'm in that experience of like adrenaline and the butterflies and the heart pounding, like step one for me is to just place my hand over my heart and pull everything back into the present moment and tell myself, like, I'm safe. I am safe. All is well. I am loved. I am loved. I am safe. All is well. So that's that first is recognizing it's being able to regulate myself through the initial emotional fear, because trying to act or get conscious when we're in that fight or flight,
It's
it
not possible.
yeah, so the first step is to ground. It's to ground through those basic impulses. And once I feel grounded and I'm conscious, right? Expanding into, going from the subconscious reaction and expanding into even super consciousness, where, I'm accessing my intuition. I'm accessing spiritual insight. I'm accessing higher level reasoning. Some people call it the wise mind. We have our intellectual mind. We become mind identified. We have our emotional body, which some of us become over identified. But taking that moment to ground into to the wiser perspective, um, so that I can see the greater truth of the situation, so I can witness and observe what is happening without the judgments of my mind. you know?
Quite a challenge.
So that's step one, right? So then step two would be why am like getting clear, like what like and excited. Ooh, a fear. Ooh, I'm having some strong emotional response. How exciting. And getting clear what's the origin? What's the originating thought that's triggering this type response? And like what is this perceived danger zone, right? And what specific action, what specific courageous action must do I get to take power of and choose in this moment? And you know, I wouldn't suggest taking action, at least for myself, until I'm 100% clear on what that is.
Definitely.
What?
That's so key to solving problems, to eliminate more issues in our lives, because many people take action in those moments, and you are not well. That's not the moment to take to make decisions, to take action outside. I mean, what you
Mm,
say, it's grounded. Hold on. Whoa. I'm okay. I'm good. Chill. Yeah, but we need to do that, and tomorrow is gonna be the worst day of your life, and you haven't paid this, and they're gonna fire you. Okay, maybe tomorrow, but hold on. I cannot think. You need to quiet down, to pipe down the
yes.
voices in your head. And I have a lot of them. Maybe I'm crazy. I don't know, but I'm a very anxious person, and they scream in my
Mhm,
head when I'm afraid. And what you're saying is so necessary if we
mhm,
want actually to overcome those fears, because otherwise we're going to make more mistakes. We're going to respond in an aggressive way. We're going to attack because we don't want to be attacked. So those kind of things are not helpful, and this grounding is actually the best way to calm ourselves down and then see what we can do. So
mhm.
I like that you're saying that, because yeah, many too much spontaneity, is that the right word? To be too fast and taking decisions might not be the best way to handle fear.
Well, and I feel like having crazy thoughts is just part of the human experience, David,
Sure, but
right?
going with them and act according to those voices, I think
Well,
is not way possible.
well, and here's the thing, like when we're born, we are so entrenched and identified with the mind and the body.
Mhm.
Like when I was a teenager, my greatest fear was, did my hair look okay? And it was serious, like, and I can remember my mom saying, "There's more to life than your hair." And I was like, "No, there isn't." Right? Because when we're born, we become so identified with the mind. We become
Mhm.
identified with our physical appearance. We become identified with this human experience. But, we're reborn again, David, when our third eye opens and we realize we exist beyond the judgments and opinions within our mind. We exist beyond this. And this is what I'm talking about is this is step 2 is, you know, it's part of the human experience to get entangled in the density. We are by nature hypnotized by our subjective consciousness. This is humanity. And our work, my work, I will talk about my work, is in owning my personal power, which is to choose. And what do I choose? I choose to occupy the perspective of the soul, the perspective of the soul. And I believe and I see myself as consciousness visiting humanity for a short period of time. So, do I
Mhm.
have moments where I'm tripped up and I'm entangled and I'm like, oh, I'm going on a podcast with David. Oh, am I going to say the right thing? Yes, dear human, Toni-Lee, you are fine. You are safe. Breathe. And what do I choose? What do I choose? And what is this fear nudging me towards? And what conscious, strategic, decisive, bold, massive action could I take in the moment of now? How can I own my personal power right here, right now? And that is step 3. It's to take the dang step. Do
Yeah,
the gosh dang thing. Do the gosh dang thing, even though you have a shitstorm, a storm cloud in your mind. Do it anyway. Witness the storm cloud. Wow, look at my brain. It's really working hard to protect me. Oh, I love you, brain. Thank you, fear, because you've shown me the clue to where I get to expand so I can have a greater bucket to go to the ocean with.
Those step by steps, I love them because it brings a very difficult idea to a way that we can actually put in action. And as you can see, um, she's telling us to go step by step. And the first step wasn't go, act, jump, scream, yeah, defend yourself. It's not good. So we need to go those steps, recognize where we are coming from, and then take action. Of course, any decision hasn't been taken until you take action. But beforehand, you need to understand where you're coming from. Why do you want to do this? How focused are you? And in what actually? Am I focused on my fear or am I focused on what I want to achieve and what I want to live here? Yeah, Toni-Lee is a soul living this experience and she wants to live it the best way possible. Okay, which actions can I take to take everything in and enjoying this part of I just let myself go because I'm afraid. And I mean, your example is great to show the people something that I have trying to explain them as well, that the things that you don't manage will be represented or will be felt by your body. Your body will tell you
Mhm.
if you are dealing with your fears or you're dealing with your traumas or you're dealing with your issues or not. And I believe when you tell me exactly this kind of illness came into your life, there was a meaning, there was a purpose, there was a reason why that show you
Yeah.
once again, hey, this is something main in your experience here in your life. This is one of the biggest parts that you need to work on. Or what would you say about that?
Mm.
Do you agree?
Well, and yeah, there's lots in there, and this idea that, I mean, this is personal power. This to me is about spiritual accountability, is the idea that everything that's happening is happening for me. It's I choose personally, David, to I choose to believe that the things that are happening and that are occurring are doing so for me to have an opportunity as a spiritual being here on earth to step into expansion, to step into consciousness. Now, for somebody to hear that, I know there were times where I heard that and I was like, I don't understand that. Listen, the point of power is always in the present moment. So, regardless of who we are or what level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, what we can do is always right here and right now. And pain is inevitable in life. I mean, that's, you know, personally, I believe we came here to experience the contrast, to experience the
Mm-hmm.
density, to
Mm-hmm.
experience the entanglement, to experience the disaster, to experience the political turmoil. You know, I can focus on the fear, but by regulating myself, and by the way, for me, putting my hand on my heart, bringing myself into the moment, that works for me, but it might not work for everybody else. For some people, it might be going
True.
for a 20-mile run. Some people need to climb a mountain. Some people need to box it out. Whatever you need to do to get rid of the hormones and the cortisol and the adrenaline so that we can see beyond the thoughts. And from there, have that wiser, broader perspective. What is really going on here? What am I really afraid of here? Well, there's political unrest happening in the world. Oh, the markets are crashing. What is my real fear here? What am I really afraid of? And where am I being called to take power in my own life? Where am I being called to step into my perceived danger zone so that I can grow and contribute? How is this happening for me?
Mm-hmm.
It's a shift, and then so step 4, that this is one of my favorites, and I feel like this has been in the last 2 years I've really begun applying this, is okay, yahoo! I stepped through it. Woohoo! Yay! Celebrate, like, give yourself a high five, like, look at you go, look at me go, woohoo! And then step 4 it's the integration. It's capturing, well, what did I learn about myself there? was my fear as really as big as I thought it was? Because there's so much gold in the review. There's so much gold in being able to claim and capture, wow, what did I learn about life and myself by going where I've never gone before? By doing the thing, and then by capturing the lesson, then I can integrate it and learn from it so that I can apply it so next time it ain't so dang scary. And then step 5,
Okay, there you go.
step 5 is repeat.
Yeah. I mean, when you manage to, you know that you have brought your knowledge to wisdom when you can actually repeat the results every single
Yeah.
time that you apply the strategy. That's why it's so important when you say repeat. Repeat means I found a way that brings me to peace, then helps me to make better choices and take better actions. And every single time when some challenge comes in my life, I can repeat it. I can do it once again, and I still get good results. And like you said, for you, grounding means just
Mhm.
hands in your heart, uh, deep breathing, and it grounds you. For other people, it's something different. Still, I will always invite people to try the ideas that we share here. Please don't
Mhm.
believe anything that we're talking about here, like nothing, but still try, give it a try. Maybe it helps. Maybe you will surprise yourself and realize, wow, I wasn't expecting that. I just put my hand on my heart and I take a breath, take a breath for 3 times, and that was it. I was calm, or maybe not, but still, you can actually try that out, and maybe you will be surprised, and we'll help you with all your process, your fears. I mean, um, do not discard these ideas without trying them out at least once or twice. I will say
And you can always do what I did every once in a while, which is get stuck in number 1 because it does kind of feel good.
it will happen. I mean, this is practice. It's try and error, and
Yeah.
it will never be finished. Something that I always repeat. It will never be
That's
finished.
hopefully, well, I mean, when we're finished, we're not in physical form anymore.
Well, fair enough. It is finished when it's finished, but
Yep.
not before.
Yep.
Uh, I love it.
Go ahead.
And Johnny, I mean, first of all, thank you for sharing those experiences with us. I mean, I really appreciate, because I know it's coming from your heart and explaining all this kind of stuff. Um, it's very personal, and I appreciate that you want to share these kind of stories. And I hope people listen to or watching this interview right now will understand how valuable these kind of conversations are, because we can see that it doesn't matter how far we have come. There's always a story behind us. There's always something that we are struggling with. We can be more, um, have more empathy with people that sometimes we don't understand or we don't like. But every single person has some stories, and it's something that I try to share here with all of you, with all of the people, all of my guests. And I would love to know from you right now, is there any mantra, or is there any quote that inspires you when you fear your fears, when you face your
Mm,
fears?
yeah. Oh, yes, and just as a prelude to that, I've come to I've come to see that this life, that I have the power, the ability to act through my thoughts, through my conscious choice to create what I call heaven on earth. And the
Hmm.
fears are actually the greatest clues to how I can do that, because the magic in life, and there are so many miracles and so many extraordinary moments happening on the other side of the work that I've been avoiding, of the action I've been skirting around. And it's so beautiful, David, this life. It can be so extraordinary. And um, I guess if there were to be a mantra, it would be, I hope it's okay to swear, but it's,
Go
"Oh,
for
what
it.
the fuck? Oh, what the fuck? Go for it anyway." We're all walking each other home. We're all gonna, this all ends. This all ends. So, you know, rather, and I'm not gonna judge myself for being
Mhm.
caught up in the density and for being caught in entangled in my fears because it's part of the human experience. It wouldn't be as juicy when I liberate myself from them if I wasn't so entangled. And when we make the choice to begin the journey of entanglement, it does require, action, and it's so fun, even when it's not, from the perspective of the soul, because the soul loves it all. The soul's just thrilled to be here, playing in the density and enjoying the game of life, David. And so thank you, for giving me a voice. And this is me owning my power and saying yes. And I didn't even have to think. It wasn't even a fear, David. Like when you asked me, it was a yes. Yes, please. Yes, I choose that. And
I love it.
there really is only one answer to every question, and that is, what do I choose? What am I going
Why
to
don't
choose?
you? Mhm.
What am I choosing? And we're always choosing, whether we think we are or not. We are always choosing.
That's true. Either consciously or unconsciously, but we are always choosing. And if you don't like what you are living your life right now, just take a look and ask yourself, what have I chosen? Because it
Yeah.
was a choice. Where you
Yeah.
are with the people you are living with, what you're doing right now is always a choice. It seems like it's sometimes that it's not like that, but if you're honest with yourself, if you're not leaving the place, if you are just um, complain about it, but you don't move, you're choosing to stay there and do what you do right now.
Mhm. Well, and if fear is a predetermined experience, human experience, like, yeah, like anybody who says, "I don't ever have fear," I'm like, "Okay, well, you are an ascended master," and there are those, I'm not saying there's not. I'm not one. I'm not a guru. However, I will say that if I'm gonna have this experience of fear anyways, then I'm gonna take my personal power and I'm gonna choose how I'm gonna respond and how I see fear. And I choose to see fear as a gift, as a clue that's pointing me towards the magic in life for the purpose of expansion, because I'm here to love it all, baby.
I
Yeah.
love it, and you can tell just by listening to you and the way you tell you stories that you're actually living your life the way you wanna, and that's why I really really love you and appreciate every single conversation that I have with you. Uh, it was well overdue. This conversation with you has been a while, but really appreciate your message. I know it will touch some hearts, this conversation that we have today. If anyone here have some questions or want to share something with us, please go to the comment section. I will leave all the information from Toni-Lee in the description if you want to know more about her, what she's doing right now, although she's right now like kind of on a sabbatical, being a mom, being at home, taking care of herself. But it's always inspiring to see what she's up to.
Well, my next expansion, David, is writing. Like
Oh yeah,
I'm like
true.
that's me. That's where I'm like stepping into where I've never been before, is growing my writing skills and letting and calling myself a writer. And it's fun. So yeah, if you want to check out some of the things I'm writing, it's on my website there, which
Definitely. I will leave all the information here for them. Thank you once again, Tony, for your time. I really, really appreciate every single person who comes to the interview and share their time with me. It is always the best gift that I can get. So thank you very much.
thanks,
And
David. Love you.
and to everyone, thank you very much for being here. Don't forget to subscribe, to forget to put a like, to share it. You all know all this stuff. But most importantly, take some notes and use it at home in your lives. And that's it. See you next time. Goodbye.